Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey everyone, it's Debbie Potts, and I'm doing a podcast from my home office, my home gym, my home restaurant where my chef lives, everything. So I feel that I've been here all day, every day for a long time, which is true. As I know you probably are at home, isolating yourselves from others as well, and working on what is driving me nuts is saying self-care, staying healthy, or staying safe. And my challenge to everyone in our world is to ask them, what are they doing to take care of themselves, to make them healthy? And what is health? You know, we should be working on improving our immune system, which is working on gut health, which starts with what you eat, right? We're a Low Carb Athlete Podcast. I know all of you probably choose to eat real food, nutrient-dense foods that nourish your body, nourish your cells, and improve your gut health. But the majority of the world, or United States, works on a higher carb diet, processed foods, easy to grab, inexpensive, but it's filled with preservatives, filled with vegetable oils, and high carbohydrates. And I think a lot of people choose foods when they feel like they're going to be stuck at home, including over purchasing toilet paper, that they don't realize that they need to stay home and nourish their cells. So not their behind with toilet paper. So it's so interesting, isn't it, to see how everyone reacts in a frightening situation and how people are scared and they go to the grocery store thinking that they can't ever go again, and they stock up on bags of Cheetos and Doritos and frozen foods, and I don't know what people buy, but I see a lot of people buying processed foods that has ingredient list of 50 different foreign words on there. So, you know, I wish we can help everyone learn, well, the 8 elements of the holistic method: eat real food, nutrition, avoid sugar and grains, the white flour, the white sugar, the white salt, the white evils, right? And then work on exercising, getting outside and go for a walk, go for a bike ride, go for hike in your neighborhood. You can't really leave your house ideally, but you know, we need to take care of ourselves. And for most of our listeners, we need to bring it back down a little bit, not overtrain and do excessive amount of cardio that will raise your cortisol, because when stress is on, your immune system is down. So we really want to work on reducing stress. And that works on not over-exercising, not under-exercising, but just that right amount, the Goldilocks effect for everything, as well as getting our sleep. You know, it's so easy to feel like you're on vacation, but this has been, 2 months we're doing this stay at home in Seattle, and it will continue to be isolated. And my schedule's different. I'm not training clients at 7 a.m. I'm not going to the gym at 5:30 in the morning. So we've even started going to bed a little later and getting up without alarm clock. I actually unplugged my alarm clock, and I'm not waking up at 4:30, but now that the days are getting longer, we want to do yoga and then go for a bike ride in the morning and start work at 8. So we just decided today to get back on our sleep schedule, getting to bed around 7 and reading in bed and working on our sleep hygiene, but then getting to sleep by 8 o'clock so we can wake up again at 4:30 and go to yoga at 5 and then go for a run or bike ride and be able to do the infrared sauna and then get to work at 8 o'clock. So that's kind of my world, and my thinking is, how do we get people to focus on getting real food. Start with proper nutrition. That will help your gut health right away. Not eating the crap, not eating the high carbs, processed foods, and vegetable oils. And then working on exercising and sleeping and getting outside for your walk. As I keep saying, breakfast, lunch, dinner means walk. Get outside first thing in the morning before you go to work, especially if you're working at home. You need to leave your house. I think it's just so bad mentally to wake up, shower, and then go downstairs, go to work. I think you need to get outside, even if it's walk around the block 5 minutes. All right, everyone, I have Dude Spellings on my show today, and I'm excited to dive in and talk about the low carb athlete and kind of what you do and everything. So thanks for making time for me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here.
So tell us about your story, your journey. I always like to ask everyone, what's your why and what's your passion and your purpose and what you're doing to inspire the world?
Well, so my passion and purpose is really to help people extricate themselves from what I call the matrix, where everybody's just busy with their life, trying to pay bills, going to work, family, everyone's kind of a little bit overextended, and it's very easy to lose track of the subtle signs that our body gives us that we're not on the right health track. And that's where I was about, 2013. So
that's when my story started.
Oh, nice. I was working out one day. Wasn't even working out. I was sitting on the floor stretching and threw my back out and couldn't get up. My buddies came over to help me up. Couldn't move, and had to wait there for about half an hour before I could get up. And I just drove home that day just with this really solid intention. I will not be this person with the bad back who can't help their in-laws with luggage and can't reach up to the high shelf to get something out of the high kitchen cupboard, or can't play with his kids, whatever. I just was not going to do that. Interesting part of my story is that my previous partner is a doctor, and so she referred me to some specialists and stuff, and all these people were like, oh yeah, we can shoot that up with cortisol, make it feel a lot better. And I don't even know why at this time I had no exposure to really any kind of alternative thinking or anything. And I just kept asking, well, I want to know what caused this, right? I don't want you to shoot it up and just mask the pain. I want to know what caused it so I can not do it again. And no Western doctor could tell me, right? They're like, oh, we don't know. We just shoot it up with cortisol. And so that started me on this search, and I ended up finding this chiropractor who I went in, and he was like, oh yeah, we know what this is. This is, we see this all the time. This is 20 years of desk sitting. This is, you're a computer programmer. You've been sitting at a desk for 20 years, weakening your core, your glutes are asleep. And we have a class that is designed to reverse this. It's Tuesday and Thursday nights. And I forget what it was. It was like $100 for 6 weeks or something. I thought it was a steal. And that really kind of set me on the path of alternative thinking. At the time, I was about 50 pounds overweight. And so I started calorie counting to lose weight. And I lost about 20 pounds, maybe 25 pounds doing it that way. And I actually got introduced to speed golf during this time. And from a local guy here in Texas. And I went and tried it, and I was still, 25, 30 pounds overweight. He was super encouraging, and he was like, hey, you did really well. He beat me by about half an hour on the golf course, but he tells me I'm doing really good. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, most people can't finish running. You did well. you're in your 40s, you could go to the world championships in your age group if you lost weight. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah. And so I started, that was actually really when I started doing the calorie counting, and lost the weight, and but still had some to go. And I made it to the world championships, and at the I got third in my age group. And at the champions dinner, I ended up sitting next to Brad Kearns.
Good old friend of Brad Kearns, Mr. Speed Golf Guinness World Record holder.
World record holder, yeah. So my friend that introduced me to speed golf says, hey, Brad, you would really like Dude's story. And, you know, the story was that I got in shape to do speed golf. And Brad says, well, how did you lose the weight? And I said, oh, calorie counting. He goes, oh, man, that's really hard. He goes, you know, there's an easier way, right? I was like, what? What are you talking about? And so he told me about his work with Mark Sisson, the Primal Blueprint, and Primal Endurance. And so I immediately, I think I ordered Primal Endurance that night on my phone. And, you know, a couple of days later, I got home and Prime already had it at the front door. So I read it, and I think the first sentence of the actual content, not the foreword and the preface, but the chapter 1, says something like, are you the guy that stands on the starting line and you know that you're 20 pounds overweight? I was like, oh God, yes, that is exactly me. And so that really started my journey towards low carb, adopting the Primal Endurance approach. And I went headfirst, all in, eliminated carbs, went down to I think 30 grams a day for 7 months, and everything changed. My allergies went away, both nasal allergies and skin allergies. I used to have skin allergies so bad that I would get poison ivy or some other contact dermatitis 5 times a year.
Wow.
I haven't had either one since I started doing this in 2014. I've lost weight, just the extra 20, 25 pounds just dropped right off, no problem. Went from, so when I very first started doing all the tenets and Primal Endurance, I had 3 months earlier, at age 45, I had run a 5K at a 6:08 mile pace.
Wow.
Yeah, nice. I won my age group, and part of my story that is in the bio I sent you is that I was a state champion in the 1 and 2 mile in high school. So I have some running history. But when I started the Primal Endurance and Maffetone stuff, I thought, I just ran a 5K in 6:08. I'll probably have to slow down to, maybe a 9-minute mile or something to stay aerobic. Could not believe that I had to go down to a 13:30 mile pace to stay below MAF heart rate.
So if people forget, I'm sure they've heard this, but the Maffetone Phil Maffetone created this in the 80s. The 180 minus your age is your max aerobic function heart rate. So at MAF, we used to just call it Maffetone MAF, but now it's max aerobic function heart rate, plus 5 on top of that if you are fit and healthy, or minus 5 if you've had injuries or illness. So
we're on meds. Yeah,
on medication. True. So you did your strict Maffetone training for how long?
For 7 months.
7.
Yeah, and another highlight I like to point out is, so I had to go down to 13:30 pace. Obviously very frustrating, very humiliating for somebody that could run a 6:08 pace on a 5K. But I was committed. I trusted Brad. I trusted the book. And then when I started the 2-week test, the elimination diet, and got rid of all carbohydrate, I had to go up to a 15-minute mile pace. And boy, I was I remember I was emailing Brad. I was like, man, is this right? Could this possibly be right? What in the world is going on here? But the amazing thing is that after 7 months, my 15-minute per mile pace had turned into an 8:34 mile pace.
That took how many months? That's 15? Or wait.
It took, 7 months.
7 months. So, but see, the thing is, most people don't stick with it that long. They give up, right? After a month. So you stuck with it that long of duration to get your body to be fat adapted, metabolically efficient athlete that took time, and people need to hear that part of the story, that it didn't happen in 1 month or 8 weeks. You stuck with it, and then it happened. And you didn't do any speed work during that time. Is all strict math.
Is all completely strict math. I cut my weightlifting down to 1 day a week, and I was doing 90 minutes a day of math 6 days a week.
Doing running only, or were you doing other activities?
No, running only.
Every day? 6 days?
6 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah, and I actually did something that was purely an accident due to my lifestyle, having a 40-hour-a-week job. But I think it ended up being something that was really helpful, and that is that instead of doing one 90-minute session, I did 3 30-minute sessions. I did a 30-minute session before work, 30-minute session at lunch, and a 30-minute session after work.
That's what I do with walking. Now.
Well, the really cool thing, and that's something I tell people all the time that are doing this, I really, really like the treadmill for seeing the progression. Because what would happen is I would go in at lunch every day, and I could literally see, today at the 3 minute, or let's go a little longer, like the 20-minute mark, I did 2.1 miles. Yesterday, I only did 2.08 miles. And so I could literally see every day I was 1 or 2 seconds faster for the same distance.
Wow. I'd be going backwards. If I ran that much in 1 day for that many months, I would be getting slower, because my body now, I find I can run 1 day and then it takes me 2 or 3 days to recover, even if I'm doing low heart rate, just as my body is unique. But I find running is just so hard in your body that you could do that many days at low heart rate. It was less stress and less faster recovery and less mitochondrial damage, probably what was happening. And your heart rate variability, did you measure that by any chance during your?
I had no idea about heart rate variability at that time.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of, if you could do it again now that we know what we know, heart rate variability, blood sugar testing, your ketones, and doing, any labs, but doing the mafetone would be kind of fun.
Yeah, I actually did do a metabolic test at a physiology lab when at the end of the 7 months to find my true fat max instead of the 180 minus age.
Yeah, good.
And it ended up being, so at the time I was 45, so my 180 minus age was 135, but my fat max ended up being 149, and I could actually feel in my body when I hit fat max and started burning carbs during the test. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I used to run those tests before the company New Leaf that we did. The testing cart, metabolic cart, got bought out by Lifetime Fitness, so we lost the ability to run any tests. And I loved doing metabolic efficiency tests and did Bob Seabor's training. And I would just make my own test up using the mafetone. Like, okay, here's a protocol New Leaf has already built in their treadmill programs for testing people, but let's see what the MAF heart rate would be for their fat burning range, and then see what it ended up being. It was weird because a lot of times it was pretty similar in the same range. That, mafetone's formula he figured out is in the shower. I heard he told me once how he figured that formula out. But it is fascinating when you can get the New Leaf or metabolic testing carts done to really see what it is as individual, where your metabolic crossover point is, where you start dropping fat and find that out. But if you could test every month, doing that too would be a great way.
I actually could do that. The test here in Austin, it was at the University of Texas Physiology Lab, and it was only $75.
Wow, that's really cheap. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could do that, because it's the best way to see where your crossover point is and see the RQ value, the percentage of fat that you're burning per carbs. And it's so fun to watch and to see your speed at each heart rate. If you get the raw data and then you can extrapolate it and just kind of track that, and I'd break it up, here's where the most fat is and look at it that way. So anyway, so I digress. Where have you gone to, going from that experiment to being a Primal health coach and running your own health coaching business?
Yeah, so I dove headfirst into all of this and read everything I could get my hands on, even reading scientific studies and whatnot. One of the reasons I did the metabolic testing is because I'd read the FASTER study and I wanted to compare myself to those athletes. And they're way more efficient than I am.
Okay, let me throw in though, because we just did a podcast on that. If females listening to this, if we listen to my podcast, Kelsey and I did on Dr. Stacy Sims' book, Roar, made a great point. That FASTER study we always hear about is all on men.
It's true.
Women. So take that in consideration when you read over research studies, look at who the test is done on. So.
Yeah, and not only that, the FASTER study, I believe, was only 14 people, 7 in each cohort. So not a very big group of participants either.
Yeah, that's why I go by N=1.
Yeah.
What's going on in my body? No one's the same messed up internally as I am. So it's like, you got to practice what works for yourself and do your own lab testing.
Yeah, one last thing I would add is that the switching to the low heart, you had mentioned like you couldn't do 90 minutes a day, 6 days in a row for that long. That could have been slightly too stressful, but compared to the way that I was training was so much less stressful that it was a noticeable, huge difference in lower inflammation, less pain, less nagging injuries like plantar fasciitis and sore Achilles and sore knees and, all the stuff that goes along with just beating yourself to a pulp every day, trying to, gut it out and go faster and stronger than you did the day before.
Which is the point of half my podcast episodes, right? Is about overtraining and recovery, and how many endurance athletes push past that pain threshold and ignore those red flags that they could have paid attention to and just taken a day or two to reset and reboot instead of years of fixing all that screw up they did to their cells.
Oh, I turned 50 next month.
Nice. I'm next year.
And if I could go back and tell my 25-year-old self one thing, it would be to don't train as hard so often and rest a lot more.
True. Now, were you doing those 6-minute mile runs back-to-back days and doing a lot of that black hole training or high intensity?
That's all I was doing. And high school track, a lot of high school track that's the regimen. And that's kind of where I learned how to train. And we did have an off season where we'd supposedly do an aerobic base building period, right? But even that, we're running, instead of using the off season to run 80 miles a week at a aerobic pace, I was running 80 miles a week at a 720 pace, or I don't know what. I have no idea if I was aerobic or not, but I'm certain it was very likely that I was not.
Yeah, especially when you're running with other people and you're in your 20s and a male.
Yeah.
Or females too. It's not men or women, because I know I started training more on my own because I'm too competitive, and so when I go with other people, it's really hard to do low heart rate training. When you figure that is a great solution, that's when you kind of have to go, okay, I'm going to go by myself, or find your friends that are slower than you and be able to talk the whole time.
It's amazing how resistant people are to this. I used to work out with this group here. It's comprised of a lot of former NCAA track athletes. One of them is Leo Manzano, the Olympic 1500 meter winner. So I mean, it's a elite group.
Yeah.
But the age range spans, to people in their 40s. And I quit going to that group, obviously, because I can't, from doing low heart rate, I can't do that. But then after that 7-month period, I would show back up to this group, but do it once every 2 months. And when I'd show up, I was like dominating, right? Because I was fresh for those workouts. Mm-hmm. And I would have these people that are in their 40s. They're like, hey man, like, how is it that you show up and you're like keeping up with these kids that are in their late 20s, and like you only come once every 2 months? Like, what are you doing in the other time that you're not here? And I would explain it to them. And they're like, oh yeah, no, that sounds soft. That sounds boring. I'm not going to do that. So, okay. I just told you the secret. I told you what it is, but people don't want to hear it.
No. And I mean, that's kind of my mission of my podcast and focusing on being a health coach now, is that I'm trying to help people avoid going through what I've had since 2013. I still can't do a marathon or an Ironman or half Ironman and run over a mile is hard for me. And I feel like it's my purpose to explain why and stop people from going down that rabbit hole than I did, that I broke myself down so much that, you don't know what's going to happen. But people need to listen and learn from our stories, because there's obvious red flags, but we're so stubborn and competitive and hardcore that we don't pay attention. Like, oh, I'm a wimp if I just slow down, or if I suck if I'm going to take a day off. And I think it's that mentality that we have to switch, going, okay, I'm going to be better my next workout if I do a walk today, or if I take yoga.
Yeah.
And do that instead of following the workout schedule and rescheduling things when needed, and paying attention to that and honoring your body.
Absolutely. And I know I had this attitude where, if I missed a training day, the voice inside my head was saying, oh, the other people that aren't missing their training today, they're getting ahead of me. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's really the opposite, right? If you train on a day when your body's telling you not to train, you're doing much more damage than you are good. And the amount of good that you could do just by resting and doing the inner work and activating the parasympathetic system to get you into that rest and digest mode so your body can repair, that's so much more valuable than another workout. Yeah,
I know. And it's being able to listen to that and learn from that. But that's why I think heart rate variability really helped me early on, because you have proof, and it's a simple, inexpensive tool that you can do for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, just lay down a test and measure, am I recovered or not? And know, all right, if I'm going to go out and do a workout, am I taking 2 steps backwards instead of a step forward, and have this constant struggle within yourself to heal and rebuild and get stronger and faster, improve your performance? Or are you continually just in this rut and you have continuous injuries, but you don't put it all together?
No. What tool do you use to measure HRV?
I was doing Sweet Beat for a long time, and because it was simple, and I like the owners. I've done work with them, so I really like them. But I know Paul Larson, I just interviewed him again, and we were in Ironman Hawaii, and he has his heart rate variability HRV Elite, I think is his, and it's when I want to try, that's just the back of your phone, and it can measure through the camera lens. Because I find I don't do my HRV as regularly as I should, because I'm in bed and I don't want to get up and put my heart rate monitor on and go back to bed and measure it. So ideally I would buy an Oura ring, but then I'm like, I don't want to sleep with that and wear that ring all the time. I think it'd be annoying. But then, you got to get the data somehow, but you don't want to, make it, you want to.
Yeah, like alter your Yeah. I used to use HRV Elite or Elite HRV.
Mm-hmm.
And using the camera on the phone is nice. I actually did get an Oura ring recently, and I hate jewelry, but
Mm-hmm.
the ring is not. It's not very intrusive. It doesn't have to be like super tight or anything. So that's been really good. It's, you sleep with it on. You don't have to like do anything extra when you get up in the morning, and it just gives you readiness.
Data.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're focusing your energy doing coaching others to help them based on your own passion and your own discoveries of your own body, your challenges, and how you switched your nutrition, switched your training program. What led you into being a Primal health coach?
So, yeah, thanks for getting us back on track here.
That's my job. I can go off on tangents forever.
Yeah, so I dove headfirst into everything after that, and read everything I could get my hands on. And the next logical step was to become a Primal health coach.
And that's with Mark Sisson's program, if people haven't heard of it.
Yeah, and I think what really cemented the deal for me was about 3 years ago, Brad and the whole Primal team came down to Austin for Paleo FX.
Mm-hmm.
And he invited me in one day, and I just had this amazing connection with everyone there. I was like, when I walked into the place and I started talking to people and meeting people and meeting people that I only had known online, corresponding in social media and stuff, I just was like, oh my God, these are my people.
Yeah, I said the same thing.
And so that really motivated me to get the Primal Health Coaching certification. And earlier, even before that though, I had realized like all this knowledge I had, I could help a friend of mine who had diabetes. And so
Type 2?
Yeah, adult onset type 2. He's about 64 years old, and he'd had diabetes for about 10 years. And so I called him up and I said, hey, meet me at Whole Foods. I think I can help you with your diabetes. He later told me, like when he heard me say that, he was like, what the hell does dude know? He's not a doctor. But I met him at Whole Foods, and they had pulled pork tacos on the buffet that night. And so I just
in Austin. So
yeah,
that's the best Whole Foods because it's the headquarters. But I ate there every day when I was there for Paleo FX and I was there for KetoCon. Like, I'm gonna go over there and eat. That's
totally. You gotta watch that's okay. You gotta watch the hot bar though, because they do put a lot of canola oil in the hot bar.
Of course they do. It's Whole Foods.
Yeah. But anyway, I made him pulled pork tacos with no tortillas and gave him plenty of pork and guacamole and sour cream and cheese. And, and I just explained to him, how to eat. And he again later told me after the dinner, he was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to do this, but it was nice to see dude. But because he is a diabetic, he has to measure his blood sugar after every meal. So he goes to his car and measures his blood sugar. And it was 119, which he was shocked because he's used to seeing like 250, 300.
After he eats, he's that high? Because he'd eat high carbs.
Yeah. And so he looked on his little chart that tells him how much insulin to take, and it said no insulin needed. And he was like, well, okay, maybe there's something to this. I'll try it again tomorrow. So he tries it again the next day, gets the same result, does it again for 3 or 4 more days, gets the same result, calls me up and says, dude, why yeah.
Dude.
Why the hell doesn't my doctor know about this? And that's really when I realized I can help people.
Yeah. Because
this message is not people aren't getting the message when they're in the medical system. They're just not, it's not there.
The type 2 diabetes, I just did an amazing interview with Professor Noakes, and he's in South Africa, Cape Town. Amazing. Everyone should listen to that. He is brilliant, but he's doing all this research on type 2 diabetes, and they're writing a book, and he's trying to get together with Nina, what's her last name, that wrote The Big Fat Surprise.
Ty Colts.
Yes, I always say it wrong. And it just says same thing as A Big Fat Surprise book. If you've read her book, it's 500 pages long, but it's the most amazing book, but frustrating book, because you read that, it's like you just said, why does my doctor not know about this? So Professor Noakes is trying to write one. He's slowly writing a bunch of different articles for CrossFit of all, but he's doing blogs, and he's trying to put in a book and have Nina write part of it and be involved in it. But how it's the same thing. It's like type 2 diabetes is not necessary, but it's a billion trillion dollar industry selling insulin when it's not even needed. They just need to change what they're eating. But people, like, the whole everything, illnesses, viruses, everybody just wants a shot or a prescription pill or something. So just always gets me so fired up that, you just ate tacos without the tortilla. Okay. So,
Shocker.
But they're not going to make millions of dollars, billions of dollars if he doesn't go buy his next refill.
Well, so on that note, so he told me a couple of interesting things he told me. One was that he's self-insured, and so he pays for all his own meds. And he's now saving $800 a month.
Wow.
Not having to buy insulin. But the really interesting thing is that he's meticulous about journaling everything and what he eats and how much insulin it takes after he eats it, right? And so he told me after doing this for a few months, going back over his records, that the most expensive thing he was eating was the free chips and salsa at Mexican restaurants, because it cost $40 in insulin every time that he did it.
Wow.
That's an interesting perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. It's like, okay, these chips are free, but I'm having to spend this much on insulin to repair the damage that I just put in my body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So once I helped him, that really lit my fire to like, wow, how many other people could I help? After having my experience with Mafetone and great success with reducing inflammation and pain and all that, I thought I kind of wanted to help runners. But it was just so much more gratifying to make such a meaningful impact with my friend Gary that I decided that I wanted to create a program that helps people really, like I mentioned at the beginning, unplug from the matrix and discover these simple axioms and tools that you can follow that really will restore health if you just stop buying into the mainstream processed food and lifestyle habits that are so prevalent.
That is true. And I must admit that, this is the Low Carb Athlete podcast, but being a health coach and focusing on trying to help people, I'll just be honest, athletes don't want to change, or they won't spend the money necessarily on health coaching because they just think they're invincible, I think, until they're broken. Yeah. They're going to wait till they got to be like me, that, all right, I'll do anything to get better. The people that I find that are responsive to following the directions I say and working on their nutrition and their sleep and their stress reduction and all of that, they're motivated because they have, type 2 diabetes, or we did lab tests and they have pathogens that are causing inflammation in the body. They're having noticeable symptoms, rather than people that don't really know. What I keep writing about every day with the coronavirus is, are you fit and healthy on the outside? But underneath, on the inside, if you look under the hood with functional lab testing, are you total disaster? You don't know unless you do lab testing. But so I think a lot of athletes don't think they're unhealthy because they're active, they're exercising, and they might do low carb, but they might put so much stress in their body from overtraining and all this other stuff. So I think what you're finding is similar to me, that, all right, so someone with type 2 diabetes, and you made that, one change, and that made them want to listen to everything you're going to tell him. And he's motivated to do it because, oh my gosh, I can save $800 a month. That's worth the coaching fee or whatever you're doing with them, and make that transformation. But I think it's interesting, who wants to get better? Who wants to be a health optimizer or repair from, what we say in FDN is metabolic chaos and have all these symptoms, but I think they have to be noticeable, or you have to reach as an athlete rock bottom to go, oh, I need help. I'm going to put my hand up finally and ask for help.
I couldn't agree more. Just in my own personal life, I started having lots of aches and pains years ago before I was doing all this. And so I found a trainer to help me. I thought, do the right movements that would get rid of all my joint pain and whatnot. And he wanted to put me on this diet, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm a runner. I'm an athlete. I don't need your diet, So yeah, I'm even guilty of that attitude. But to your point, I would agree totally. Most of the time, athletes have a sense of that they know what they're doing, that they know their bodies, and they some of that's true, right? That I do think athletes know their bodies better than non-athletes, but the functional lab test and your blood work and stuff is a lot of times stuff that you can't feel necessarily unless you. It goes back to my analogy of the matrix, right? Until you unplug from it, you don't notice the subtleties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do? You have a Primal Reboot camp. I always say reboot and reset the whole you from the inside out. So good word. Primal Reboot camp. Talk about what that is, because I think it's similar to what I do and really teaching people the Primal health coach lifestyle habits that Mark Sisson always talks about. And you're helping people do that online and in person when we don't have coronavirus pandemic.
So I'm lucky. I created this course last October.
Online, nice.
And it's online. So I haven't really been that impacted in that respect. But yeah, it's a 12-week program. I basically I wanted to convey to people I wanted to create a simple system to implement a lot of the things that I knew would move the needle for people. And my program covers everything from diet and nutrition to circadian rhythm, parasympathetic activation, stress management, meditation, and a few other lifestyle things. But first 7 weeks is diet and nutrition. And I really just kind of wrote everything down, tried to mimic the steps that I went in, but instead of doing it over the 3 years that it took me to figure all this stuff out, condense it down into 12 weeks and present it in a incremental way each week that people could follow. And I did my first one last fall, starting in October, and I had 5 people in my class and got great results. Everyone lost weight, which is a common goal for most people. And I had one woman who she was in her late 30s and hadn't had a period for 3 years. Said that she had her first regular menstrual cycle with a period in 3 years after doing my program. So that's
stress.
Yeah. And that's super rewarding. I mean, she already has kids and she doesn't want to get pregnant, but
that's funny. You could say as a guy, I helped someone get their period. And that's an
right?
exciting win of my whole program is someone got their menstrual cycle.
Well, for me, it's what you're talking about earlier with, the functional medicine testing, right? That's a sign that your hormone cascade is doing what it should be doing.
Yeah, I love the Dutch Complete test. We just did a podcast with them. I podcasted a lot last month. I have podcasts scheduled out for the next year because of being at home every day. But the Dutch Complete we use a lot as FDN practitioners, and it does is great information on all the different hormones and some neurotransmitters as well. And it's just, I love being a health detective, looking at the different labs and doing what we do as a Keon coach and you're as a Primal health coach. All the lifestyle habits are so essential because I always say you can't out supplement poor lifestyle habits. You can't just, a lot of people listen to podcasts, they read blogs, social media, and especially now the coronavirus, like what should I take? And they don't realize you need to start with nutrition, eat real food. You need to get outside, get sunlight, fresh air, walking, and sleeping is a huge priority. And all these lifestyle habits people forget and they neglect, and they don't realize that all the supplements aren't going to help if you have leaky gut and you have damaged gut wall lining. You're not even absorbing your nutrients. So much of it is working as a health detective, basically, is what we do and putting those pieces of the puzzle together. But you're identifying clues, as you are too. What are your imbalances? Where are your hidden stressors and where are your external stressors? But always start with foundations, lifestyle habits, nutrition and all that's so key.
Well, I would say, and you can tell me if you found this to be true as well, but I would say especially for the athletes that I have worked with, so many of them overlook sleep. Mm-hmm. Especially the type A athlete who's, got an executive career, very successful. They also want to be successful in their hobby of marathoning or 10K or Ironman or whatever it is. So they're super focused on that, super type A, and they're burning the candle at both ends, trying to be everything to everyone, including, super person at work, super mom or super dad at home, and throw in 10 to 12 hours a week of endurance training. And something's got to give, and it's usually sleep.
Yeah. That's my book, Life is Not a Race. I said that we all think we're superhuman and we're invincible and we can, burn the candle at both ends. I remember once I had a listener reach out and they work night shift and they're training for Ironman. And I don't think, if you want to get healthier, don't train for the Ironman. It's like the worst schedule she had, going to damage your body for years to come. And it's hard because everyone wants to do a race and they want to finish and they'll sacrifice everything, not realizing they could be damaging themselves for long term. And I would say performance and longevity. I just wrote a blog. Do I want to be traveling when I'm in my 70s and climbing up the hills in Tuscany and going for bike rides in Majorca? Yes. I don't want to be crippled in a chair and sit all day at home in Palm Springs reading the newspaper. I think it's key. Look at what's going to happen in your future. So
absolutely.
So I know I'm running out of time and I always get off track too, but anything else? Great information at primalrebootcamp.com, and your next program, when are you going to run it?
I think I'm going to start on, I just finished the last one last week, and it is quite a bit of work. So I think I'm going to take maybe a little break and start my next one on June 1st.
Oh, good. Yes. People don't realize these programs when we run them, and we just take a few people because we want to make it, one-on-one. And I hate doing the mass ones that everyone just follows his own. It's impersonal, and you're not charging. That's really low price for all the work and hours you put into that.
Yeah.
You just limit it to 8 people. It's twice that much of what the value is in it for.
That's about the size I like to limit to, 8 to 10.
Yeah. I say like over 12, way too much because you want to help each person, but should up your rate.
So one thing we probably should talk about on the Low Carb Athlete podcast is my rim to rim to rim of the Grand Canyon that I attempted with no food.
Yeah, okay. Finish up with that.
So I had my cousin actually runs a trail running and training company here in Austin, and she organized this trip to do a rim to rim to rim of the Grand Canyon. And there's probably 15 people of varying abilities. And we just all kind of like paired up with somebody that was our ability level and planned to do the rim to rim to rim. And we didn't train together or anything. We just got out there. So I thought it would be I'd actually done a rim to rim to rim 13 years earlier.
So let's go. Is 7 miles one's rim to the other rim? So going.
No,
rim, oh no, wait, 7 down, 7 across, 7 up. Is what it said.
Yes, yeah.
That's what it meant. So that would be nice if it's just 7, but no, it's 7 down, 7 across, and then 7 up.
Yep.
And then you get up there and do you rest or you turn around, come back. Away? And then you go back again and back again.
Yep. So just get to the other side. And what I did, actually, what I was able to do both times is sit in the snow and pack my legs in snow for about 5-10 minutes before I started back.
That's smart.
Yeah. But I wanted to try to, I've been fat adapted for several years at this point, and I hadn't really done any ultra endurance stuff like this. And I thought, I just want to do the whole thing at MAF and not take any food. When I had done it 13 years earlier, I was on you got to carb up plan. And I was carrying 100 gel packets and all kinds of carby foods. And this time, all I carried was electrolytes, beef liver capsules from Ancestral Supplements. And I did throw in 4 gel packets in case I absolutely needed them to get out. And so I was wearing a heart rate monitor, and I wanted to keep it below MAF the whole time. And I was running with these 2 women who were 20 years younger than me, probably. And they wanted to run a little bit faster than I wanted to. And I didn't want to do it, but how it is, I wanted to keep up. So I did. And then going up the North Rim, I felt like, oh man, my heart rate is pegged. It is I'm maxed out here. What in the world's going on, And I was actually afraid to look at my watch, and but I did, and I was shocked that my heart rate was 149. And if you recall back earlier, I told you in metabolic testing that my fat max was 149.
That's right.
And so I realized I just don't have any glycogen to burn. So I'm limited to burning fat. So I'm limited to 149.
Would you do that treadmill test the same year? Because it changes frequently.
No, this was a couple years after that. But I realized once I made it to the top of the North Rim and I could go downhill, that I'd be fine. And so my friends passed me on the way back, and I said, yeah, I'll catch up. They're like, what are you talking about? And sure enough, once I got to the top, I was able to run 9.5 minute miles downhill and catch up with them, and caught up with them at the bottom. They're like, what the hell happened? And I told them that I hadn't eaten any food, and they're like, what? You're crazy. And then I used those 4 gels to get out going up the South Rim, and ended up doing it 2.5 hours faster than I did 13 years earlier.
Wow. Yeah, that's it's on my bucket list to do the rim to rim. I don't know if the rim to rim to rim, but rim to rim. But that is amazing, because you think, it's so much easier too. You don't have to pack all that stuff in your back pocket. Because I know I did this Enchantments hike. It was 22 miles in one day. It's outside of Seattle, and it's absolutely beautiful. But I was low carb then, and I just remember taking barely anything, and it's so much easier packing wise. You just we brought some, I think, dried meat, and I don't know, I can't remember, it's 2013 I last did it, but it is easier packing when you don't have to eat. It's simple, less complicated for sure.
Oh yeah, it's so much easier. I mean, everyone I went with, they couldn't believe how small my pack was, and that I didn't have a bunch of food in there and whatnot.
Yeah, but don't try that your first time. You do have to work up to it, become fat adapted, and it just didn't happen overnight probably for you. It just was
No.
progress.
This was a couple years after doing.
Yeah. So people listen to that, because I think people will do is go, oh, I heard this guy dude say he did no food, and they go try it, and they bonk, and they don't have any fuel. And I think a lot of people don't realize, again, you have to put in the work and the time and be patient. It just isn't some pill or magic thing that just happens. You actually have to make it work for you.
Yeah, that's a really good place to end. I think it's for both the athletes and just people wanting to improve their health. It's incremental changes that happen over time. It's not I'm just going to change the way I eat today, and then tomorrow everything's going to feel better. Yeah. It's not how life works. Anything that's worth achieving takes some effort. And if you stick with it, you might be surprised at how you end up feeling.
So true. Well, great way to wrap up the show, and we'll put everything else in the show notes, and great stories. And I think, doing what you're doing is awesome. And I hope and pray that this COVID-19 pandemic in our world is going to make an impact in the health world. And all of us that are practitioners out there trying to make this impact as you are, people start to listen, and I think we'll make a difference. So thank you.
Thank you. This is good to be on.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.